All right, so this is a fascinating coffee grinder. It is largely responsible for the entire genre of high-end hand grinders, and for many, many years, it was far and away the industry leader in that regard. And anytime you get a product like that that is just so dominant, people tend to love to hate on it. And the Comandante C40 is no exception. You get people saying it's way too expensive, it's overrated, it's outdated. And then on the other hand, you have these very staunch supporters of this grinder who say it's fine the way it is. Those people are blowing things out of proportion. The brews are perfect. You don't need to look any further, and it's worth every penny. Who is right in this scenario? One thing is for sure, everybody seems to have an opinion about this grinder, and I have an opinion of my own as well. Before we get into any of that though, let's take a closer look at the C40. This one was sent to me by the team at Cafune, incredible retailer. I've bought from them for many years. Love what they do and the way they do it. You should definitely check them out. They got some discounts and stuff below in the description. These grinders are made in Germany and come in at around 300 bucks US. That's going to flex a little bit depending on the aesthetic finish that you go with and where you're located. The body is metal. It comes with a glass bean jar as well as a polymer jar, and the burrs are these nitrogen-rich stainless steel. The axle is also made out of metal, and then there are some composite support pieces in here. And like nearly any other hand grinder, you take the handle off the top, you put the beans in the grinder. There is an adjustment mechanism on the bottom right here, so you set that to whatever grind size you want to use, and then you start grinding. And in short order, you have your ground coffee right here in the bottom. Feel-wise, I do find it one of the more comfortable grinders to hold just with my grip. It's very easy to turn the crank around, but with that ease of use, there is a compromise in taking a little bit longer to grind compared to some other grinders. When you're ready to brew, you just take your grounds and you dump them into whatever you're brewing. It can be used for filter and espresso. We'll get to that in a sec. And before we actually get into taste and all that kind of business, if you really want to understand the C40, you need to understand the landscape in which it was created. It's about 10 years old now, and it can trace its beginnings all the way back to about 2013 in Germany. And at that time, there was definitely not a lot of options as far as hand grinders go. In fact, many people, including myself, used something that looked like this. This is the Hario Mini Slim grinder. The Hario Skirton grinder was also very popular, a little bit bigger. Ceramic burrs, not very good alignment, not very good grind quality. One of the only options out there. There was also the Porlex, which is a Japanese grinder that was really popular back then, and not a top-notch compared to this and many of the other hand grinders that are now available. The owners of what would become Comandante saw a need here for people who wanted to enjoy really good coffee, especially on the go at home, and they started developing the C40. And the taste, this is a Granja El Paraiso 92 Sudan Rumé by Sorlina Coffee. Wow. That is a very unique cup of coffee. I'm getting a lot of lime right off the bat. Very sweet, also high acidity, nice and juicy. This is a yeast inoculated thermal shock coffee. I find with yeast inoculated coffees, it gives them a really nice milky texture. Very good. And this is kind of the magic of the Comandante and the C40. This is a really great pour over, and of course it's a great coffee, so that is going to come into it as well. But this grinder, the C40, is giving an excellent representation of it. There's no part of the flavor profile that is like jumping out and taking over another area. It's very evenly defined around the whole flavor profile. It's giving me good acidity, good sweetness, good body. It is just a really good representation of the flavor of this coffee. Now, as far as coffee grinders go, this is a 10-year-old design, and the cups are still absolutely fantastic. But when this was released, this is what a lot of people were using. This was a whole other category of enjoying coffee. The C40 very quickly took the enthusiast world by storm. There wasn't anything like them, and almost single-handedly, they created the niche of high-end hand grinders. You would see them used in competitions. They really got picked up by the AeroPress crew as well. And before long, anytime you posted a recipe online, someone would come along and ask for the grind size in Comandante Clix. It very quickly became a standard. Some people would even say the gold standard, not just in terms of taste, but also in terms of approach. But the question you have to ask is, more than 10 years from the origins of this grinder, is that still the case? And we're gonna get there, but there are a handful of things I want to talk about first. Number one is that taste profile. And I think that that is what has given this grinder so much staying power. You'll see some people talk about the aesthetics, the ergonomics, the taste is what set this grinder apart and what kept it in the front for so long. Anytime I review a hand grinder, I almost always get asked the question, how does it compare to a C40? It's just very balanced, very flattering. You get good clarity while retaining body and sweetness. For many people, this is the perfect middle ground for filter and immersion coffee. On espresso, it will give a very similar profile, very flattering. It will kind of take any of those more negative aspects to a flavor and kind of duck them in the back while giving a nice flattering representation of a cup of coffee. It is not the highest clarity grinder, which is something you'll see discussed a lot online when, with grinders like the ZP6, which I recently reviewed, as well as the Pietro. And in my opinion, that is actually a good thing. You don't always want high clarity brews unless that is something that you are specifically trying to seek out. And the reason for that is, yeah, you can get really good flavor separation on a grinder like that, but any kind of less than ideal part of the flavor is going to also be put under a spotlight, and that can make for not the nicest cups necessarily, even if the coffee is pretty good. Those types of grinders also tend to pull back a little bit on the sweetness and body, whereas this grinder and grinders like it will give you much more of a complete package. And it's not to say that the coffee out of this grinder is unclear or muddy. You still get great definition in the flavor. It's just a much more even and well-rounded representation of it. When you drink a brew that was ground on this grinder, it just feels right, which in my opinion is why they became and stayed so popular. And one of the secrets to why that is the burrs, which are right in here. To get at them, you just unscrew this little adjustment mechanism right here. And once it's off, the lower burr will pop right out. They are nitrogen-rich stainless steel. That's going to make them a little bit harder and more durable than typical stainless. The inner burr is about 30 millimeters and the outer burr is about 38 millimeters. Now, before we get to other grinders that have, let's say, encroached on the territory traditionally held by Comandante, let's talk about performance. Retention, which is the amount of grounds that kind of get stuck and hang around in there brew to brew, like many other hand grinders, is very low, which is a good thing. Grinding on filter, I was in around the 20 click mark, just for the way that I like to typically brew and the coffees that I like to brew. And it would take me about 45 seconds to grind a cup of coffee. And again, that's a little bit long as far as grind time goes. Each click will change the target grind size by about 30 microns. I like that Comandante delivers their step distance by that metric using the actual particle size instead of burr movement. When you're talking about espresso, however, that is a pretty large gap, and it would take me way longer to grind for espresso. I could be grinding upwards of 2 minutes to get one shot of coffee. And with that click step distance of 30 microns, I could be anywhere 8 to 12 seconds of difference in shot time, click to click. That is, in my opinion, not enough fidelity to dial in a great shot of espresso. Now, Comandante does offer something called their Red Clix kit. Has a separate axle in here with finer pitched threads and a new nut for the bottom, new spring couple washers and all that. And that will have that step distance as far as adjustment goes. That did improve the fidelity on espresso. You know, once I had that axle in, I was getting about 4 to 6 seconds of adjustment step to step, which is in line with some other hand grinders that I've tested and enjoy using. However, that kit is an extra $50 on your price tag, and it doesn't do anything to help with the grind time. The espresso, however, did taste great, but just for all those reasons, I think that if espresso is your primary use case, I would probably point you in another direction. As far as filter, immersion, whatever, plus the occasional espresso, how does this grinder stand up to its competitors more than 10 years after its inception? One grinder that gets mentioned a lot when people are considering a C40 is the Espresso K Ultra. And this is a grinder that has, let's say, departed from a lot of the more traditional design choices of the C40. You know, most obvious is this external adjustment wheel right here, where you can very easily see your grind size at a glance and make adjustments without needing to take off the bottom or count clicks. But I have talked to people who have tried both and do prefer the internal adjustment and clicks, so let's call that one a personal choice. This grinder also has a magnetic catch cup, which is kind of nice. One thing I do really like about the C40 is the calibration. Basically, you just tighten the little knob on the bottom all the way until the burr locks, and then you're calibrated. Super simple. But one really stark difference between these two is the speed. The K Ultra is almost twice as fast to grind as the C40 is on filter and on espresso, whereas I was grinding for upwards of 2 minutes using this one. This grinder will chew through those beans in like 30 seconds. And with the fidelity out of the box that you need to get the Red Clix set on this grinder to achieve. I will say, I like dosing into, like dumping my beans into this grinder more. On the Espresso grinders, I almost always find a bean bounces off of one of the internal supports and comes out, and I got to pick it up and put it back in. Holding them, I kind of prefer this one. I know a lot of people also prefer this one. The K Ultra also has like an all metal structure inside, whereas the C40 does use some composites. As far as taste goes, when you're reading online, you'll see people kind of say these two are a wash in terms of taste. And I wouldn't say that that is my experience with these two grinders. I find brews on the Espresso, the acidity will kind of jump out and punch out just a little bit more than it will on the C40. I might even say that you get a little bit of a clearer sense of the overall flavor profile of the C40 because the acidity end of the spectrum is not kind of jutting out quite as much as it does with the K series. And again, these grinders are in a similar zone taste-wise. Depending on where you live, these two grinders are going to be a bit of a flip-flop as to which one is more expensive. If you live in Europe, this is going to be a lot more competitively priced. Here in North America, both are about the same. And if you live in Asia, it's going to be probably a little bit more expensive to get this one than it is to get this one. One other thing that you'll probably turn up as you're researching the C40 and Comandante in general, comparing it to other grinders, is some legal disputes around grinder design and cease and desist letters, all this kind of thing. No company that's involved in any of that I'm aware of, Comandante or otherwise, has made public comment about those things. So you're kind of at the mercy of whatever internet rumor you try to side with. I don't know personally what is behind all that, but you are going to turn it up if you research this to any depth. And then you have all the grinders that have crowded the market over the last decade that are trying to offer most of what this grinder offers at a way lower price. Grinders like the Q Air, you know, it's got a lot of plastic parts, kind of looks like it came from the dollar store. Is it a C40? There's only one C40, but this does offer really good cups at the price of about $100. Kin Grinder is another brand that you'll see mentioned a lot in this space. Time More offers a lot of very good and relatively inexpensive hand grinders. Those types of grinders really offer a lot of the punch of grinders like this one in the K series at a fraction of the cost. And this is where people can get a little bit funny and maybe even a little fanatical about things. You go online and you'll see people saying things like, the C40 is so outdated, why would anyone buy that? The world has moved on, it's way too expensive. And then you'll see other people saying things like, nothing beats a C40. It is the gold standard. Why would you bother looking elsewhere? And if you can't remember number of clicks, like, you're a baby. And they're all sort of wrong, and they're all sort of right. Are there grinders with improved quality of life design features to them? Yes. Is the C40 still an enjoyable grinder to use? Absolutely. Does the C40 offer as close as there is probably to an industry standard cup of pour over coffee? Yes, I would say it probably does. Does that mean it's the only good tasting hand grinder, or you need to spend $300 or $400 to get close to that profile? No. So this is where I land on this. If you want the C40 cup, the cup of coffee you've heard so much about, people grinding on Comandante, there is only one C40. And that cup is an excellent cup of coffee. The grinder is easy to use, feels great, feels premium, and for better or worse, this is still the hand grinder by which almost every other hand grinder is measured. For me, I really enjoy brewing on it. I wouldn't hesitate to grab it out of my cupboard. It offers a fantastic cup of coffee. I also enjoy brewing on the K Ultra and the Pietro and the ZP6, all dependent upon how I'm feeling that day and what I'm looking for from a specific brew. They all offer different things, and they are all excellent hand grinders. And if you don't want to spend that much money, you don't have to. There are a lot of more affordable grinders out there that will deliver you great cups. I just think back to those days where I was trying to choose between a mini slim or maybe did I want a spring for a Porlex grinder, the extra, and the number of options that are out there today, it's just mind-blowing in comparison. I know this can get a little charged, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this. If you like my videos, subscribe to my channel. It's probably the best way that you can support me in making more of these videos, and it doesn't cost a thing. I hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you next time.